are you all? Yeah, good to see you. It's a really special occasion here on a beautiful spot on country. Yamalundi, Agorabare, Aginigi, Paral Murambang, Nyadi, Yinjamali, Yinawal, Nambri. It's a beautiful day here on this country, the traditional lands of the Ngunnawal Ngambri people. Before we start today's proceedings, we'd just like to honour country and pay our respects. Naya Yam Shimba, Naya Yam Wirijuri, Waugulu, Gumbengir, Ngambri Jambra. My name's Shane. I'm a very close friend to this beautiful family that we're here to honour today and their stories. My ancestors are Wiradjuri, Narendra, Waugulu, Chumit, Gumbangir, Bellingen, and Ngambri, Canberra. Naya Galanaranga, Goyu Giriwa, Jalomgo Gili Gangar, Naya Galanaranga, Murambang, Ngunnawal Ngambri. Naya Nia Galanaranga, Nindiga Gaguga, Naya Nia Galanaranga, Jindiga Guyua. We pay our respects to country. We honour the land that has been nurtured into time memoriam. We thank the Ngambri and Ngunnawal people for contributing to this city, the life of this region, and we thank them for sharing their space with us. We pay our respects to elders past, present and future. And I pay my respects to you for being here, for sharing your story. I thank Ant for sharing his family story, being the one in the family who has expressed a story that we can all draw learnings from. It's important that we share our stories. That's what true reconciliation is for us. To have the space to tell our story, to have the space to speak from the heart and to look at things through fresh eyes when we have new information. And that's what this story is about. It's about belonging. Ben, within the story, didn't understand the tenancy of the land in which he lived before he went away, had fresh eyes, and had a new opportunity to look at this space. And the passion and the love and the connection and the hope that Ant has brought back here with these stories has given us all an opportunity to look at things afresh. The final line within this beautiful book is everything and everyone was in its place on country, as we are. This country wants our energy here. We have important work to do for this land and for each other and for our humanity. So please today take the opportunity to share your story, to connect and to connect to this beautiful place that has nurtured all of us and will continue into the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shane, for those heartfelt words. I'm moved, and it's a joy to be here with you and to be on country with you. And now we'll hand to my uncle, Richard Cawsey.
Shane, that was extraordinary. Thank you very much for that acknowledgement. I too would like to acknowledge that we meet on Ngunnawal and Ngambri lands, taken, never ceded. I'd like to pay my respects to the elders of the Ngunnawal and Ngambri, past, present and emerging. I'd also like to acknowledge the elders of the mob, where I'm honoured to live, the Wiradjuri people of the Kulin Nation. Honoured guests, my name is Richard Cawsey. I'm family to both Anthony and Kelly, or since reading, belonging, Ben and Jordi. Ben, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. It's an honour. When coming into a conversation, we often, too often, leave our biases, predispositions, assumptions unchecked at the door, seeking first to be understood, looking to challenge what we hear, not really caring to understand what was said. Thank you. When I say we, in reality, that means me. I far too often come into conversations weighed down by unchecked baggage. So how do you actually hear, understand, lead and examine life, learn new things, and acquire wisdom? Listen to voices that challenge you and confront your long-held assumptions and beliefs. Challenge Western views of land being property. Property to do with what you will, an asset to trade and transform, and a custodian, but a custodian only if you care to. A possession addressed simply by property rights and land use laws. What is country for First Nations of this continent? A cynic's view, a mere grab for current wealth, or is it something far deeper, far more essential and far more holistic? I think stories and storytelling, as Shane has quite rightly said, is key to disarming one's biases and to start hearing what is actually being said. I am indeed fortunate, profoundly fortunate, to have two guides on my journey of understanding into our First Nations connection to country. One, my nephew Anthony, making it accessible. The other, his wife, my niece Kelly, for making it real. Both remarkable and inspirational guides. How lucky am I? Anthony's novel, Belonging, is an engaging, passionate, open-minded window into a white Australian's quest to understand that country needs people and a people need their country. A deep, deep need within individuals and First Nations culture and well beyond mere possession. Belonging, the novel, a gem in its own right, is just a small part of how Anthony helps me listen to those voices. And one of those strongest voices, if not the loudest, is Kelly, a proud Warumungu and Laricha woman. Kelly's deep connection to both family and the country of her forebears resonates and fills the time spent in her presence. She determinedly corrects me when I make some crass statement, which is far too often. She patiently answers that old aging uncle in the corner's questions and proudly represents her heritage. I'm greatly looking forward to when next we share time with Kelly and her Northern Territory family. As I see it, there is only one clear gap in the book. We know Jordi is pregnant by the end, so something must have happened. We feel the tension build as evening falls. They sit atop a hill, overlooking the desert, hands near touching. I read on, eager for more. But at no stage is there a proper description of Anthony and Kelly, sorry, Ben and Jordi, in the sack. Perhaps we have to wait for a sequel. On that note, I think it's probably time to hear from Ben. Anthony, over to you.
I think before you hear from me, there's two other people to hear from. Professor Asmi Wood, if you would be happy to go next, and followed by Paddy O'Leary from Country Needs People.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Asmi Wood. I'm from the Western Torres Straits and have lived in beautiful Ngambri Ngunnawal land for several years now. I too would like to acknowledge the owners of this country who've cared for this place for so many thousands of years. It's not 250 years. I'd like to talk about place, and this is a place of law, and I'm very grateful to the white men and women who taught me your law, that we learn to help our people to be less oppressed by your law. But when we look at this place here, our people met here in this place and talked about law and talked about ceremony and talked about creation and talked about the spirits of our ancestors that are connected across this beautiful land, after which this book Belonging is named, referred to. Ben, my beautiful brother, everybody's calling you Ben, so I'll call you Ben as well. You know, it's people like you who taught people like me to become more, people like you to travel with the magistrates, to help our people not to be imprisoned anymore, not to be detained without proper process, not to have summary trials with very little time spent, where the barristers and solicitors wouldn't even remember who we were and how we were. Now we have, you know, Aboriginal people, because of places like this beautiful university, that can now speak for our own people as well. Jordi, well, you look beautiful, you're wonderful in here, but I think my brother Ben can speak about you, but you are my sister and I'm very grateful for that. But I would like to talk about Matthew in this book, because Matthew represents many of us, taken away from our families, taken away from the love of our families, and raised in a white man's country with white man's language, white man's mannerisms, and taught to be white, and yet we were called coconuts because we were white on the inside, but still couldn't get rid of the color on the outside. We had to remain coconuts for the rest of our lives. But this Matthew did want to go back to his place. He wanted to go back to where he belonged. Something inside him drove him. And this book beautifully, beautifully illustrates that point of where our peoples, black and white and something in between, meet, fall in love with each other, fall in love with country, which is what is really important to us. It's not a commodity. It is not something to be bought and sold, but it's something from which we come out of. It's like our mother. We are born of her, and in the dream time, we return to her so that we can tell our stories in the dream time and in the intervening periods. This book talks about belonging, and I remember when I first read it, you know, it was like, yeah, this is all right. Ben, you did all right. You know, you did tell the story because you were truthful about your ambivalence, about your absence of connection to country, and the slowly dawning connection that you got through, sorry, that Ben got through through Jordi. And you do speak the truth. You do speak the truth of the person to whom you were connected. And through your story, I hope that you will bring many more people to understand this country and to love this country the way we do. Not something to be bought and sold, not something to be exchanged, not something to, I don't know, just something to put on your balance sheets. No, but this is our mother. We walk on her and we walk gently on her. I'd like to conclude by referring to a poet, Rumi. I think Judge is smiling because she loves Rumi as well. Rumi said that it is the ocean that makes the flounder when it's not in the ocean. And this is the story of Matthew, and this is the story of many of us who were taken from our families, taken from our country, and we flounder to get back to that ocean. And for many of you who don't take that journey, this book will help you to understand that proverbial mile that we are walking. And as brothers and sisters in humanity, I urge you to walk that proverbial mile with us. So thank you very much. Congratulations. And please buy a copy of the book and ask him to sign it. He writes nice things in it. He said I was a really good bloke. So, yeah.
G'day everyone, and welcome to a really beautiful evening here on Ngambri and Ngunnawal country, and thanks for the introduction from the traditional owners. I just wanted to say thank you to Anthony first of all. My name is Patrick O'Leary and I work for a group called Country Needs People, and some of you may be aware of us, but we're relatively new on the scene as an independent new non-profit, and we're completely focused on supporting Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander land and sea management right across Australia. We have about 40 odd partner groups, right, literally from the Torres Strait. And in fact, just this week I was in Cairns talking to GBK, which is a newly forming group around the representation of the Torres Strait, but right down to Victoria and across to WA as well. So Anthony's really kindly decided to donate any proceeds he makes from the book to us. And we've agreed that our aim will be to direct that funding back through the Central Land Council to the ranges around Tennant Creek, the Warumungu Uncle ranges. And I just wanted to say, I think that's a really fantastic thing to be able to try and redirect some practical support back to people on country who are, right as we speak, looking after that region. I was lucky enough to go to Tennant many years ago when I was about 18, 19 actually. It was one of the places that really sticks in my memory. And that was one of the things I loved about the book, actually. I actually loved that taste of dust in your mouth, and it brought back Tennant Creek and actually some really good memories from way back then to me. And I actually think it was a really, you know, I also liked about the book, it's fairly raw in terms of, you know, the main character being really open about his own discovery and limitations. And I think anyone that's travelled or tried to engage, you know, with traditional owners around Australia, one of the first things that becomes obvious to you is your own ignorance, really. I grew up in Western Victoria, surrounded by Aboriginal country names, beautiful names, you know, Karagulat, Karangamite, Kawarran, you know, Barramunga. We didn't know anything about any of that stuff at the time. But what we do know is then, you know, previously when my ancestors came in through Port Fairy, it used to be called Belfast, and, you know, who knows, maybe they spoke another language in that time, maybe it was Irish, I don't know, and they looked at the world through different eyes. But our prosperity and our good fortune has been built off land that we know wasn't ours in the first place. And so I think we all grapple with that in various ways. I think, you know, one of the great things now is that, and what I've had the good fortune to work around for the last 20 odd years, is Aboriginal land and sea management is really going through a renaissance, I think, in Australia. There's a lot of challenges, there's a lot of difficulties, it's a complex space, but there's so much success, so much strength, right from Tennant Creek down to Victoria. My chair, Dennis Rose, is from the Gunditjmara people in Western Victoria. They just had World Heritage nomination for the beautiful eel trap aquaculture system down there that's really sophisticated, very ancient. You know, we're in the Torres Strait where people are talking about their connection right down the coast to the Great Barrier Reef and all the complexity of that sea culture. There's so much exciting and positive stuff happening in the modern context. It's not just a romantic notion. It's about, you know, how do contemporary people express their love of country and their responsibility in the landscape day after day, whether it's fire management, you know, threatened species, cultural heritage management, and so on. So I'm really privileged to work in that space. It's been great to meet Callie and Ant in Canberra, and also know that Cal's got that Warumungu connection back around Tennant Creek. I think it's really fantastic the way the book brings that to life for me and puts me right back in that landscape. So it's one of the things I love. I won't go on too much because there's plenty to say, but thanks heaps, Anthony. I think it's, you know, a really honest look at, as a white fella like myself, going into that landscape, all the limitations we've got, the challenges, and changing from someone like me who thought you knew a lot to realising you're only just beginning to get to know the people and the landscape that we live with and live in. So I don't think I'll say too much more than that. We've got a few banners over there. Feel free to look at them later. My colleague Emily's here with a few little pamphlets if you want to have a discussion and a chat later. Thanks to all the speakers, and really appreciate the gesture from Ant. And yeah, please do buy the book because it will help us and help the Rangers.
So going to do something that I ordinarily don't do, which is read, and that's because it is an emotional experience to be here with all of you. and I also have to stick to time. We're beyond time, so I'll do my best. So thank you for coming today or Zooming in online, and special thanks to those of you who've journeyed from afar. I'm humbled by your presence and by the threads that weave our lives together, connecting us here today in a moment of time. It's a moment of time that depends on our ancestors, on the lines of force and influence that shape their lives, their deeds and misdeeds. These lines stretch back in time across countless generations. These lines, threads of a tapestry, stretch out across this ancient continent. For some, their origin story is this land. Others arrive as newcomers from lands across the sea. Today, those of us here in Canberra stand on Ngunnawal and Ngambri land. This is land to which they have belonged and cared for over countless generations. It is land that was stolen by newcomers, enacting an unspeakable brutality of which we must speak. It is a land that the Ngunnawal and Ngambri continue to stand in connection with, from which they cannot be separated. It was and always will be Aboriginal land. And it is land that for those of us who are newcomers, we must come to know, respect and care for through a reckoning with truth and our place in the story of country and its peoples, a reckoning that begins with listening. So I thank you, Shane, and your ancestors. I pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging. And I thank those First Nations people who've shared their wisdom, generosity and hearts with me. Each of you weaves the threads of, or the thread of your ancestors into the life of this moment and all of the moments to come. It is these threads, powerful lines of force, but not violence, which have the capacity to shape a future of which we can all be proud. There are too many people to thank by name. Belonging owes its life to countless threads. But I do want to thank my wife, Kelly, her family, now also my family, and her people, the Warumungu and Luritja, and their ancestors. The stories that interweave belonging arise from Central Desert country, Kelly's country, and the country of our three beautiful sons, Kelvin, who is raising our granddaughters in Darwin, Jai, who you heard performing when you arrived, and Ashton, who will be doing the business of selling you books. Just over a month ago, a part of the country to which they belong was handed back in a native title ceremony at Banka Banka Station, 100 kilometres north of Tennant Creek. Now, on the cover of Belonging is an artwork by Kelly's Luritja and Warumungu uncle and godfather, Robert Ambrose Cole, who passed in 1994. To me, it speaks of the wisdom of connection, of a belonging that cannot be possessed. He could not be there for the handback, but I'm sure that he was watching on. Inside, in the print version of the book, there is a second artwork by Uncle Robbie, known in Kelly's family as Nana's tree. It is the tree under which her Nana was born, mother of her mother, child of their ancestors. It is a tree on Warumungu land that speaks of the power of country to hold, to give life and receive it. And so it is fitting that we stand today before two trees here on Ngunnawal and Ngambri land, a Canberra blue gum whose ancestors have grown here since time before time, standing proud amidst the winds of change as the Ngunnawal and Ngambri have done beside them, and an oak whose ancestors come from across the sea, ancient and wise in its own right, and yet young in the ways of this country. Both stand rooted to the land, drawing their life from it and returning their life to it, just as we might hope to do, whether our ancestors grew here or came from across the sea. Which brings me to the question put to me by my Uncle Richard. Why did you write this book? There's no time for me to fully answer that question, and I suspect I could not do so. The threads are just too many. But I will say this. Looking back, I can see that belonging arose from the experience of its opposite. You see, I grew here, right here on Ngunnawal and Ngambri land, and yet I was not rooted to this earth. I did not see, hear or feel country for what it is. I did not even know the names of its traditional owners. I did not understand the true history of this continent, this ancient continent, or the fact that my position, my privilege, and my very being rested upon the original and enduring injustice of invasion and colonialism. I did not understand that my story was embedded in this conflict, or as Senator Patrick Dodson puts it, this unfinished business with country and its peoples. I did not understand that finding true belonging would depend on learning to listen to First Nations voices, to face the powerful, profound and painful truth of which they speak. But what I did have was the love of my parents and family, carried down through their own ancestral lines. And like so many of the extraordinary students that have sat beneath these trees, a sense of injustice that drew me to the study of law, to the lives of those caught in the criminal justice system, and from there to the lives of the most incarcerated people on the planet. These threads drew me to Mbuntua Alice Springs, to Warrender Country, where I worked for what was then the Central Australian Aboriginal Legal Aid Service, now the North Australian Aboriginal Justice Agency. It was there and on the country of the many peoples of the Central Desert that I began to listen and to understand. Taken by the hand by Aboriginal field officers, by Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal lawyers, working at the crushing coalface of the criminal justice system, at this meeting of worlds, I began to truly see the threads of history playing out in the present. To understand, as Charles Perkins said, that we cannot live in the past, but the past lives in us. In the cells below court, in the interview rooms, on the red dirt and in court, I began to appreciate the destructive power of these colonial lines of force to which I was heir, and their tenuous authority over country and its peoples. But it was here too that, listening a little more deeply, I began to hear and to see and to feel a much vaster, timeless authority. One that saw my clients stand proud despite their burdens, to speak the language of country with a certainty of place, and walk with a profound sense of connection. This was true belonging. For me, this was a glimpse of the vastness of country that holds the stories of survivors and perpetrators, of pain, heartache, of love, beauty, and strength. It took the red earth and the generosity of spirit of those I worked with and for, and those who shared their love with me, to open my eyes to the truth that is here with us now. It is the timeless wisdom of connection that sees country in everything and everything in country. This is the truth of which these trees speak, in a language understood by country and its peoples. For those of us who are newcomers, the challenge is to catch a glimpse, and then to work to keep it in view. If there is a why, then it is in this glimpse. It is in the hope this story, told by a newcomer, might help you, if you too are a newcomer, to catch a glimpse and motivate you to listen truly and deeply to First Nations voices. They are strong and getting stronger. So it is fitting that I leave you with the words of the late Bill Nighy, Gargaju man and senior traditional owner of Kakadu National Park. I feel it with my body, with my blood, feeling all these trees, all this country. When this wind blow, you can feel it. Same for country. You can feel it. You can look, but feeling, that make you. Feeling make you, out there in open space, heat coming through your body. Look while he blow and feel with your body. Because tree, just about your brother or father, and tree is watching you. Thank you for coming. We now have a musical piece from Guy and Shane and Deb Nelson, and I'm so grateful to Shane and Deb for coming and sharing their love and their connection. And after that, we have the launch, the official launch by Sally, and hopefully there will be still time to grab a drink, but we'll get there.
off a dirty mouth, drag it in with the prison style. Vacant bone, dirty feet. Need a bed, then for something to eat. Well, I played for you, and I played it right. 'Cause I ain't you not dance all night. Love to you, it's the only one. Didn't know that it would come undone. I hit the road when I was 15, when my mama died and my daddy got me. Now I've been locked up since 21, and I was my mother's only son. Got him up from those early days. Remember what she used to say? Little boy, you're my pride and joy. You're the only good thing about our Fitzroy. Now I feel the wall rushing down all around me. It'll make me go with that town somehow. And I've been drinking all the wrong things all night. Think about what I gotta do to survive this life. Got him up from those early days. Remember what she used to say? Little boy, you're my pride and joy. You're the only good thing about all Fitzroy. She said, little boy, you're my pride and joy. You're the only good thing about all Fitzroy.
So thank you. That was amazing. I've heard that song played by Jai and by Dan Sultan, another brother from Alice Springs, Aranda fella, but I've never heard it played like that with Shane and Deb, and that was just extraordinary, and so thank you. So now if I could hand to our Dean, Professor Sally Wheeler, for the official launch.
Can I too please begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land, surely the most forgiving, the most patient people on earth, land taken by fiat, land taken without a treaty, always important in the context of white man's law, as Asmi would put it here in this place, to state that. I've had the privilege of reading this in advance. It's a beautifully written book. I don't think I perhaps knew quite how autobiographical it was. There was a suggestion when a copy was handed to me that there was some note of autobiography in it, but not perhaps that the principal characters should share the names in the book. Joking apart, it is a book that we should all read. It's called Belonging, but actually it's about, for me, systematic oppression for which no one in the book as an individual is responsible, but an oppression which leads to the most incarcerated people on earth, oppression by a system which is a system which has been imposed, a system which is brutal, which is underfunded, a system which leads to terrible outcomes. This, for me, was a real awakener. I read it in 2 sittings. It's 200 and something pages, 100 pages at a time. Yeah, and it absolutely shakes you to the core. I know, I suppose, what you're told when you come to Australia, what you read, what you immerse yourself in, but there's nothing like reading an account like this of just the awfulness of it. This should be compulsory reading for every starting law student. This should be compulsory reading for anyone who wants to know anything about how the system actually works. I hope that some of the things we're trying to do here around decolonizing the system, decolonizing legal education, about forcing people to think about what white man's law is and what it does and how it works and how it should work, will go some way towards remedying some of the things that I read about in here. Please get the book, please read it. It's a great read. Anthony, huge congratulations.
So, thank you. I'm truly humbled by your presence. I'm truly humbled by the words that have been spoken and the fact that it is really all about stories intertwining and us working out where that story goes from here. And that's something that is all of our responsibility. That brings the proceedings to a close. You're welcome to buy a book now if you wish. There's some drinks. I don't think it's going to be for very long, so you might want to get to the head of the queue. But please just stay, you know, as long as you like. And again, thank you. There's some wonderful, remarkable people here. We're remarkable people, and together we can do things that can have a real tangible impact on the injustice that Sally speaks about. And that is, if you like, a core aspect of this book. Thank you.